We are weaving the astrology with Gene Keys with human design and bringing it all the way back to the I Ching and the elements of the I Ching. So it's all the languages becoming one language and all the charts becoming just different maps of the same blueprint. So we can have a birth chart in astrology, we can have the body graph, we can have the Gene Key golden path, and it doesn't matter where we look. It's the same numbers, it's just mapped in a different way. It's one sky, one wheel, and we can weave however we want. So the main thing that we always speak about is that for each and every zodiac sign, there are going to be archetypes or gates or gene keys that live in that part of the wheel or overlay that part of the wheel. And then taking it back to the body graph, those archetypes or those gates, they are home in a certain center. They live in a certain center. They belong to a certain center. So there's always this overlay between a sign and the gate and where it lives in the body graph. Here we can weave it as well with the ruler of the sign. We can weave it with the house that corresponds to the sign. We can go into the I Ching and look at the elements there, or we can simply go to the elements that are color coded of the zodiac. So we can say, right now we are in gate 35. That's where the sun is, and that is in the part of the wheel that is Gemini. So here we have air element and we have versatile energy and we have a lot of connection, and it's also the throat gate. We can play with all the different systems to expand the language. What we are going to go and do in Decoded is that the main map or chart that we're using is the golden path. And that is Richard Rudd that found his own way of taking the human design planets and mapping them as a journey, where he speaks about it as walking the golden path. So what is that and what isn't it? Well, it is a hero's journey through the planets. Even if he doesn't call them planets, he calls them spheres, he calls them pathways. We are journeying through all the planets and we're looking at them in terms of the gene key or the gate and the line. It's not about pushing through. On this hero's journey, it's about pausing and being able to see our patterns and see what doesn't work and see what hurts, and to be able to pivot, to be able to lean in a little bit deeper or cut if we need to cut. So it's okay to not continue the same patterns. It's okay to mutate. And sometimes when we lean in, we get to merge with life. We get to merge with the higher frequencies. We get to merge with soul and spirit. So pausing, pivoting, and merging. It's a continuous spiral of evolution. We want to gain self-awareness and embody more of our true nature and live with an open heart. The spiritual path is actually using our relationships as mirrors and pointers to see the challenges and face them so that we can integrate them. So that's especially the work is done with the Venus sequence, Mars and Venus and the moon. And then he says it's knowing yourself to self-inquiry. And in Unlock Your Design, we would say knowing yourself through self-inquiry, yes, but it's also being yourself in how you move through the world. It's that embodiment that comes with the awareness. And that's also why we are pointing out that the gene keys are not using the body graph. They don't use aura type, inner authority, channels, and connection charts. So that matrix of the body, of the definition of where we are home and where we're open and where we filter, it's not there. And sometimes that makes it a little bit harder to ground into being because it's more a framework of knowing what's going on. In the gene keys, we don't look at the zodiac wheel. We don't look at the astrology. We mention maybe, oh, SQ, it's the inner or prenatal Venus, but we don't really go into astrology and say, what is the archetype of Venus? Venus, what does she stand for? What sign does she rule? So it's very limited in that connection. And that's what the difference is with how we walk the golden path with Unlock Your Design. We are bringing in the body graph and the human design, and we're bringing in astrology and the zodiac wheel, walking the wheel. So decoded is to be able to speak this language and not only doing it for ourselves, but actually start to do it for other people as well. So this is a deep dive. If you feel confused in the next 10 minutes, then this is probably not for you because I'm going to speak to you about the basics of the weaving of the language. If you feel like, oh, that's a piece of cake, then this could be for you. So the profile and the journey. This is what we know as the golden path. Let's start to weave the language. We are in the 6. That's the gate or the gene key or the archetype. We could also say that's the sign. The 6 is Virgo. So here we have gene key 6, gate 6, archetype 6, or the peacemaker, and the sign is Virgo. We could speak about somebody's sun or life's work in any of these ways, using any of these systems. And then we have the line that we can speak about as the fixer in the gene keys. We could also say it's a leader. We could also say that this has to do with the throat chakra. We can also say the heretic, the words they're using in human design. There's many different ways. So we don't necessarily need to know all of the different spheres and what the 5 is called there. We can also go to the chakra, we can go to the element, we can go to the role and connect from there. So many different ways of speaking about the line. When it's a sphere in the golden path, we are actually speaking about the planet. So let's name the planet. And then we have the pathway. So what makes it a journey is that we're connecting the planets or the spheres in a pathway, and each pathway has its own theme. On that theme, we can speak about it in an evolutionary astrology way, we can speak about it in a gene key way, or we can just speak about it as how we are becoming whole through reclaiming the whole blueprint of what we are, because all the planets were somewhere in the sky when we were born. We are a snapshot of that through the neutrino streams, through the imprinting, and we get to reclaim all our parts as we become aware, integrate and embody more when we walk the golden path. But when we walk the golden path in this way, it's not a gene key journey. It is that we have the freedom to speak to the planet or speak to the archetype or speak to the chakra or speak to something that is more a metaphor that we would use than to keep just speaking through one system or one language. So here is overview where we have all the planets. So this is astrology, but it's actually also human design, because you can see that some are black and some are red. So the black ones are the moment of birth and the red ones are 3 months before. Richard sometimes called them prenatal, but they're actually 3 months before, 88 degrees back in the wheel. And here another example of how the language is woven. So city is the same as essence, is the same as in human design and astrology, we would say beyond duality expression. We don't really have that in human design. For the gift, we can speak about potential, or I often say the human pathway or the true self. That's the human design and the astrology, the true self. And then we have the shadow, could also be the way of speaking about it in astrology. That is the challenge, or it's the not self. So we can choose how we want to speak to the things in the chart. And then a little bit just on the 6 lines. So here we can see the 6 lines are the decimal after the gate. So we are deeper into the design, and the 6 lines, of course, are making up the profile, but there are lines in each and every planet. So we have 6 lines. This is the way that we look at it in human design, the little guys in a house, and they have different roles. But we can also look at it in a more embodied way to say line 1 is the root chakra and the earth element. Line 2 is the sacral chakra and the water element. Line 3 is the solar plexus and the fire element. Line 4, the heart chakra and the air element. Line 5 is the throat chakra and the ether element. And line 5 is the third eye and the spirit element. So instead of saying, oh, somebody has so many third lines and they are a martyr in their life, or they're a game changer or a change agent, we could go and say there's so much fire and dynamism, and they're really connected to the desire of their solar plexus. So we don't necessarily even need to know all the keynotes. We can just go to where is it home in the body, and we can read the chart from there. So here, again, this is what we are doing, is that we are not in this training learning to look at one planet at a time. We need to know them. We need to be able to name them in astrology and human design and gene keys, but we're looking at the dynamics. So in the activation sequence, that's the same as the incarnation cross. And this goes with the profile as well. So this is what we weave together. It's personality, sun and earth, and design, sun and earth. This is your mission in the world, your purpose in the world, your costume in the world, how we perceive you, and how you need to tap into those lines and these archetypes, these 4 archetypes, in order to fulfill your purpose. There are dynamics there. We can look at, for example, how living your activation sequence or incarnation cross in a low frequency is going to affect your attraction sphere, the chemistry with others. It's also going to affect your core wound, either having it become more dense or allowing it to become the fuel that you serve the world with and that you take initiative with. So looking at the dynamics with incarnation cross, the activation sequence, Together with, if we have those two touch points in the low frequency, what happens with the chemistry with others in the core wound, and in the high frequency, how is this the fuel for the best relationships ever that are going to transcend the karma and embody the dharma, and also allow us to really speak our truth and be who we are in the world. And here we just see, so we have the leading archetype and how we shine in the world. That is our sun. Our evolution is our greatest challenge and what we're here to learn, personality earth. The radiance is the light and what keeps us healthy. That is the design sun. Then we have the purpose. It's our beingness and what fulfills us really deeply. It's why the soul coming to anchor in the world. That is the design earth. And that's it. Now the dynamics are changing to the Venus sequence. And here we have Moon, Mars, and Venus. Both design and personality, except for the moon, that in this sequence, we only have the design moon, and we actually start from the anchoring of the design earth. So this is about integrate your whole self. It's coming back to reclaiming all our developmental phases from the gestation to the 7-year cycle between 0 and 7, then 7 to 14, then 14 to 21. So it's spiritual, it's physical, it's emotional, it's mental. It's also about our life force, our sexuality, that kind of interpersonal relational wounding, and also how are we anchoring in our relationship. So we need to look at Venus, Mars, and Moon together to understand how to become whole and how to also mirror in our relationship in a way that's more healthy. So let's do the little journey again. So the purpose, it was ground us, design earth. The attraction is our sexual wounding, is our magnetic field, is the chemistry with others. There's our design moon. The IQ, that is our intellect, how our mind works, is what we value. We really love what we have in Venus. It's what we love in other people, what we value in other people. So this is when we are 14 to 21 that we get this imprinting. And this is the normal Venus in astrology. The EQ is the normal Mars. So that is the emotional intelligence. And this is the 7-year cycle between 7 and 14. This is emotional imprinting. And then the SQ is physical imprinting and vitality and connecting to that 0 point that leads to spirit and soul coming together in the very middle. So that's design Venus, and that is 0 to 7. And then the core, it's the ancient and collective wound. We could even speak about mythical wound. That's design Mars, and that is the 3 trimesters in the womb. That can also have a kind of mirroring to those 3 spheres, which is the trinity of embodiment. So in 7-year cycles. And then the last one in the golden path is the pearl and the star pearl. So this is liberating your prosperity and your harmony. I call it sovereign because you're including more planets. I would just say you're including more. You have done the work of the personality and the soul are coming together in the breakthrough of the first sequence. And then you're working with the moon and the Mars and the Venus, and you are becoming aware of your imprinting. Instead of living out the karma over and over and over again, you're able to integrate and you're able to move past some of those patterns that come from the shadow. And then you're ready to stand on the launch pad and start to move and express in the world as who you truly are. And that's the outer planets that are helping us with doing that. But what I can see is that in all of these, there is a cluster of planets. There is never a planet. You can see that there are quantum pathways. There's never a planet by itself. I look at many of these things in terms of clusters, or look at the SQ and the stability, but what's another agent? Like, how can we ground that even more? What's another thing from astrology or human design that we can add there to really be able to understand the dynamics? So for every sphere, it's not only the planets, but let's just look again. So in the vocation, which is the core wound in the Venus, we have the greatest gift and the fuel for our mission. So that's still design Mars. And then the culture, this is our prosperity portal, our protocol, our team figuration. The line shows how many people we should ideally have on an everyday basis in order to create value. This is design Jupiter. Then we have our brand, which is our leading archetype, our lead. It's our role and how we shine in the world, a little bit more powerfully, more kind of a mid-heaven connection than what it is in the life's work in the first sequence. And that's the sun again. Then we have the pearl, which is our legacy. It's the law of our life, personality Jupiter. Jupiter is the law, it's the luminous planet that we need to follow. If we don't follow it, we're going to be punished. We're going to have a lot of unease in our Saturn activation. And also, when we leave this plane, if we have lived out that law, there's going to be an afterglow. What's left when we leave? So it's very important that anybody that you look at, not only yourself, any person, they need to follow their personality Jupiter. That's their legacy. That's what's going to stay when they leave. And then we have creativity, which is design Uranus. This is about quantum leaps. I also believe that it's connected to the nodes. This is not something Richard Rudd says, but I've seen it so many times. When you tap into your Uranus, when you're not afraid of the unexpected anymore, or you lean in even if it's unexpected, that's where you start to quantum leap, and it really goes together with the trajectory from your south node to your north node, but not running away from the patterns in your south node, but actually integrating them in a healthy way. And then we have the relating sphere, which is personality Mercury, and that's your voice, your transmission. Again, more about that midheaven connection, connected to your values as well, connected to your drive, your personality moon, how you're reflected back to in the world as you're speaking, as you're giving that transmission that's so unique for you. And then we have the stability, which is design Saturn, connected to your foundation, like I said, the inherent grounding, connected to the SQ, connected to the purpose. We need to anchor it all the way down. So that's super important for the whole entire Merkaba or whatever formation we have on the top. For that to be able to be stable, we need to make sure that we are grounded. And that's what happens in that sacred marriage between Venus and Saturn. And those are archetypes that have to do with that sacred marriage for all of us. And if that's something that interests you, you could focus on that in your readings even. That was something Richard Rudd said to me in 2000. I think it was 17 that he thought that would be a cool place for me. So we all find where we are drawn to. So all the other planets, I did do some examples here. So let's just look again. So we don't have in the golden path the south node and the north node. So it's about soul trajectory. It's also about health integration. The moon is not in the golden path. It's about mirroring and reclamation. It has to do with the first reflection back from our caregivers. So sometimes that was not a healthy reflection. So we need to reclaim our personality moon. I have a Scorpio moon. It can get super unhealthy. It's in fall in Scorpio. So I have had some work to do there. Then we have Saturn on the personality side. And that's our teacher. And also, like I said before, it can create a lot of unease if we're not following our law and our values. Uranus on both sides is the unexpected, but also what allows us to quantum leap. Neptune can be our blind spots, but there's also an access to a higher octave. Neptune is about illusions, but it's also about cracking illusions. So when we crack illusions, well, we actually upgrade, and there's a higher octave of acceptance, of love, and it is connected to Pisces through the rulership. So that's also why we have that kind of spirituality and vaster energy. And then Pluto, connecting it back to evolutionary astrology, it's connected to our deepest transformation, our evolution. I always bring in Chiron together with Pluto because it shows our transformation journey. And that's super important. And that also goes to astrology, looking at this programming partner, the opposition in the wheel, because we can never solve Pluto from Pluto. We always need to look at the other side and find that integration. So that is all the planets from human design. And then bring it back to astrology. So this is, I would like us to do this in the program. And some people might feel like it's a little bit overwhelming. So it can go gradual, maybe focusing on human design and Jinkies to start with. And then as you feel more ready, you're bringing in more of the astrology. And that is when we start to look at certain planets from the golden path. So let's just take the sun, the life's work, the brand, right? We can start to look at what house is that in. And you are going to get the foundation courses in astrology about the signs in the houses. So then you start to see, what does it mean to have your sun or your life's work in the 11th house? That's connected to Aquarius, to the future, to movements and people that have similar vision for the world. So starting to also look at where in the wheel are we, not only in terms of the sign that all these gates here are Taurus, but also in this specific chart, what house is it? And we can, as the snapshot too, to look at this, oh, this seems like there's a lot going on here on the cusp with Scorpio Libra. What does that mean? We don't need to know all the aspects. Oh, that's a square and that's a sextile. No, it's like, it's just also intuitive to see, okay, this chart is heavy here. That's interesting. It's heavy on creativity in the fifth house, but it's also heavy on these signs that are so different, the Libra and the Scorpio. And this is quite intuitive. We are not becoming astrologers. We're using astrology to expand our language, to be able to see deeper and see more. And it's also amazing for conjunctions, because sometimes people say, oh, I have 46 four times in my golden path. What does that mean? It's really cool to be able to go to astrology and be, okay, let me see what it means. Here there is a conjunction between SQ and the South Node. And that's in Capricorn, and that's in 61. Okay, Capricorn can be quite rigid, knows best, one structure. But then there's psychosis in the 61. And then the SQ, the inner child, is dealing with that. And it's also the South Node. It's poor kid, a lot of structure, a lot of psychosis. And there's probably something there where, she's longing for inspiration. And we could even go and look at the line for the SQ, and it's the fourth line. Okay, yeah, the medicine here for that child is community, is to come back to the heart. The world is crazy. There is psychosis, there are rules, there are structures, there are demands. But if she can just come back to the fourth line, her heart, it's going to help. If she can come back to the second line, the South Node, her naturalness is going to help, right? So starting to weave and starting to use the geometry of having everything in one chart, that is amazing when we start to use the bi-wheel. This is also something that can be added to any reading. Okay, people have different numbers in the golden path, but what of those numbers are actually also creating channels? So in my chart, for example, the 7 is my purpose, the 31 is my attraction. That is creating a channel. And the channel is an important theme in human design. And not only that, the channel is creating definition. So that takes us to our definition. What is it to have our lives work in an undefined center versus a defined center? I have my life's work in the G center with so much definition, so many activations. So I'm not filtering a lot of other stuff. I have my own definition there. Very different if the 61 would be my sun. To have your mission always bombarded by what's outside of you. And then inner authority is also coming with definition. So where you have definition, that's where you're supposed to be home, and that's where you're supposed to answer, respond to the world. And some people don't even have it in your authority because they're super open. So we do want to look at somebody's golden path and also say, oh wow, this is a mental projector. They only had the head and the ajna and everything else is open. That's going to change in how that person is going to have challenges in the world, filtering so much. So we don't necessarily go and say, oh, you're a generator, you're this, you're that, but more on a broader scale to understand openness, to understand the definition, the centers that are colored as how we come home. And also coming home in the body and responding, because that's not really what we are saying in the gene keys. It's more about self-awareness and being in the heart. But what about the body? All of us, we need to ground in the centers, whether they are defined or not. We don't want anybody else to inhabit our undefined centers. So we need to be home everywhere. So being home in the body and responding from what's consistent in us. We could also speak about splits. So if you have a lot of your golden path gates in part of the chart that is a cluster of centers that are together, but then there is something else on the top of the chart, for example. There can be a lot of different things that happen when we are starting to look at each body graph as a matrix and start to decode that. So this doesn't have to always happen. We could have another module in the future where we start from the body graph and then we go into gene keys and we add in the frequency bands and other things. But this one, it's connected to how can we understand the hero's journey of the golden path through the language of astrology and human design as well. And how can we make sure that we respect somebody's design and somebody's way of being defined in the world and not telling them to do something that's against their blueprint and their true self. And everything I said has to do with the dynamics between the spheres. So we are not learning about each and every gate. We're not learning about each and every line. We're looking at the dynamics. So the incarnation cross, the activation sequence, our purpose, the profiles in the beginning with the activation sequence, the anchoring, the dharma, the relationship chemistry, that's in the Venus sequence, the imprinting as well with the 7-year cycle. We're learning about life mission and drive and expansion in the Pearl, adding more planets, voice, essence, professional authority, the midheaven, for example. And then we're looking at the nodes, we're looking at Uranus, the challenges, the breakthroughs, the hero's journey. We're looking at Neptune, the mirroring, bringing the moon from the personality side, reclaiming who we truly are here to be, not in reflection, but from coming from the inside. We're looking at Pluto, our soul trajectory, and how we can go from being in a consensus state to an individuated state. And with all this, I would like us to do each and everything with the three languages. And at the end, we need to also make sure that we have everything we need for the tools and the practicality to deliver readings. So what is that doing in between all these? There's going to be practice so that we actually are looking at these things in the charts, which means that you have to be there. It's not a place to just say, oh, I'll look at the recordings. Well, you can, but that would be a waste of time. The really cool thing is going to be, okay, let's get to work and let's look at the incarnation cross and let's look at some of the dynamics. So we are going to focus in on different things and then bring all together at the end. But it's important to have practice along the whole journey. So it's going to be me, Jasmine, and Kalima are going to help me. And we're bridging the gap. There is especially the pattern recognition, the formulas, and the structure and the practicality. Okay, we learn about it, and now let's look at chart. Let's get together. I have said no to a lot of people that did application saying, oh, I've self-studied a bit. But if everything I spoke to didn't feel clear, it's probably too advanced. And then we have the ongoing practice assessment and also the completion with making sure that I feel like you are ready and that you feel like you're ready. I think that this is part of something bigger with Unlock Your Design, which is not just in this one, but it's going to be to do all the things that we've done. You've done Walking the Wheel, you've probably done Thrive by Design, you do all the planets, maybe for yourself as a study as well. But I don't want to make this a 2-year thing where you need to take all the courses and then this is like the cherry on the top. I think that coming into this and see how can we become ready to help each other, to be sounding board for each other. That's how I started. I never decided to read charts. People asked me. So how can we actually train with each other, practice with each other? And not many people speak all the languages fluently when it comes to human design, Jinkies, and astrology. And I see more and more of you doing that as you are in the universe of Unlock Your Design.
I get the impression this is a smaller group, number one. Is that right?
Yes, I've said no to many people because I don't want to invite confusion.
Will we be working on our own specific profiles as we
No.
move through this?
However, there will be support. So there is one call a week on Thursdays that I will do, and that is either the theory that I'm presenting, and then we have questions about that, or it's a practice session. So that there can still be questions, but you're going to be paired with somebody and you're going to look at a certain sequence and you're not going to look at your own chart, you're going to look at that person's chart. However, because we aren't doing the 2 years, walking the wheel and walking the planets, it's impossible that it's not going to stir things up. And that's why Kalima wants to host so that we can come together, not necessarily only about how we are going to do this for others, but like what's alive, what comes up. So yeah, it's like this is very fast through everything. And things are going to come up. And of course, we want to make sure. I believe that is the responsible way to do this. Whenever it comes up, we have to walk the talk. Brady, you are a 4-6, right? There's no way of not walking the talk. So it's impossible to do this and not be asked to take off more layers and take off more layers. And hopefully, as we're going to be at least 3 people for a group that is not going to be a lot of people, I think there's going to be support and different people are going to have breakthroughs and struggle in different parts. So it's not focused on the journey that is for each one of us, but it's impossible to do this work without evolving and looking at what comes up. It's a chart interpretation program so that you start to be able to either speak to the totality of somebody's chart, or you could say, I feel that I'm very interested in the Venus work. So that you're going to focus on Mars, Venus, and the moon. However, I would say, even if you focus on that, to be able to see the whole is important because you might guide somebody somewhere where it's not actually accurate for their whole design. So that like look at this totality, learn to understand the totality, decide with your intuition and who you are and your filters, what is it you're going to convey to the other person. But it's definitely to do that. However, some people could do it, oh, I want to understand my family's charts. Anybody who says that they have been in human design or gene keys or astrology for a year, I don't think that's enough. I think maybe if you've been in unlocker design for a year, because then this is the everyday language. Then you come up to speed right away. But for somebody most of the people that have applied and that have sent me messages are human design certified with either Karen Curry Parker or Jenna Zoe. I was very surprised because we don't have these people in our community and they're not here today. They have applied already. So I think that it's not in the Jinky community. The certifications are not like something that people really look for. And in human design, it's been these people that kind of do the same thing. And I am not interested in doing generator, projector, whatever, whatever. I think that there is something well beyond that's going to be way more helpful for people and way more fun to teach too. We don't want to be other human design readers. This is not to become a reader. This is to become a magician. It's really cool to be able to look at somebody's blueprint and be like, I get this person. The reason why I don't start with human design is that so much time would just take to teach the same thing as you can just go out there. Or, you are going to get our foundation course, but there are so many other people that teach that. So I think that it's way more interesting to teach something that nobody else teaches and to do the golden path and not just knowing yourself through self-inquiry, but as walking and speaking and being yourself in the world. That is more exciting to me. And that's probably my sun in the 11th house, that kind of Aquarian energy of let's start a movement, let's do it for real.
Decoded is more, it's feeling like for me, it's more for someone who wants to really do what you do, to offer insights into these, in a holistic insight into all of these systems for other people, right?
Right. And at the same time, I would say if you have any kind of business, if you have a new employee, a new coworker, a new collaboration, you definitely want to be like, okay, I get who I have in front of me. The shortcut of knowing somebody's design. I'm working with True Self with Max right now, and whoever is going to come in, it's let's look at their chart. Let's look who they're going to be paired with. What is the connection themes? How many compromise channels? Like human design, especially, but also we can start to look at things in the relationship stuff with Mars and Venus and Moon. So I think that anybody that has to do with human beings, for your own sake, to be able to just take up a chart, see the dynamics, what is our challenges, what is our potentials, like, so remembering your own chart, be like, oh, so cool, this person's sun is my north node. Oh, wow, the mission and the trajectory and everything is like so much energy suddenly. So I think that decoding charts is important. I worked with a Navy SEAL like many years ago, Christopher Maher, and at that time he had looked at over 8,000 charts for all the people that came to him. He rarely speaks about human design. If he speaks about it, it's really basic. It's like you're transpersonal. He doesn't say you're a 5-1. He says you're transpersonal. Why are you living as the opposite? And he will not have people sign up for the $40,000 program the same day if they are emotional authorities. He will be way kinder to projectors. I'm like, that's a manipulation. He's a 5-1. I'm like, that's what you guys do. You manipulate people. You're horrible to me. He's like, you're a warrior. You're a sacral 34, 57. So it's not to manipulate people. It's to learn to love people and to learn to get across to them the way they are instead of trying to change them. I think that this should be mandatory. Not everything necessarily to be able to like sit down and do a whole chart reading, but to decode the patterns that is going to help you because you understand things that would take you 10 years to learn. Yeah, it's a shortcut, but it's not a bypass. So that's why it's important. Any other concerns, any questions? For several of you that are in Unlock Your Design, this is normal for you already. So probably the presentation wasn't telling you a lot more than you already know. But if we would go to any Gene Key group, local group, or to any human design community and speak about this, it would be like, it would hurt their brains. So that's, yeah, it's not normal. It's normal if you've been in this universe. Fernanda.
Yeah, I find it very interesting, but I'm clearly not ready yet. But my question, would it continue? Will you offer this later on?
I think it would be even better for you because now, like I was saying to Jasmine and Kalima before, this is a lot of that third line. Trial and error, you could say, but experimentation. Let's do it. Let's jump in. Let's put everything in a pot. Let's stir it. And let's make sure that at least the people that come in know that what ingredients that we have in this thing that we're stirring.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And then we are going to learn so much. Oh my God. Everything went really good until module 3. Then people were confused. Okay, what happened? And then we are able to put things into place so that we can create something that is maybe even in modules. Maybe people don't, this time, like you come in or you, like it's not like a long payment plan. You come in, you get it, you say, I want this, you get the whole thing, and then hopefully it makes sense or you make sense of it later. But I think for when it comes to certifications, modules are good. So some people might not want to do the whole program. I think that everything that we have done in Unlock Your Design from A to Z could be done in a way that is like a curriculum. But some people are doing so much on their own so that you might want to come in a little bit more advanced level. You might not have to do everything from zero. So yes, I usually never do the same thing twice, but I definitely feel like I like this. I've been wanting to do this for 3 years. So it's not on a whim that I'm like, oh, this feels right. It's 3 years. I had the basic thing of the course, but it wasn't this risk taking when Ashley was in it because we're going to do only gene keys as the like the scaffolding, and then we were going to add a little bit of weaving, and then we're going to do another for human design and a little bit of weaving, and now it's like everything thrown in there. So yeah.
Great. Well, congratulations. And yeah, I'm a 3-5, so I love experimenting anyways. And yeah, so I'll join something you're doing later on this subject. But thank you. It's fascinating. I would, yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Jasmine, is there anything that you feel like you want to say to the group? Is there anything you would add before we jump off?
I'm just excited to start. That's everything. No, I'm really happy. I'm looking forward. And I'm sure that will be a lot of interesting and new inputs, very useful, especially
And you,
because you have a lot of experience. So,
yes, and going back to what Brady said, you are actually going to get to know yourself because think about for all the practice sessions, you're paired with somebody who's like a completely new mirror that is looking at your blueprint and is focusing on a certain dynamic that has to do with certain planets and saying, this is what I see in your chart. Sometimes all of us that I know and the people that I have approved, I know that they're intuitive. They are doing many different modalities that are like actually quite already in their life. They are mirrors for people with other things that they are doing. So I think that through the mirroring of other people are looking at your chart and telling you about your Mars Venus dynamics or about your Jupiter and your Saturn and what's important, even if they are not completely correct, even if it's not completely 100% accurate. And that's also what we can say in this chart interpretation. We don't always have to say, this is how it is. It's like, this is how it reads to me. This is what I get out looking at your chart. There's so many ways. So everybody's going to be able to pull out some dynamics that are going to start to stir things in us. So it's not completely true to say that it's not for self-development. Maybe we find out that there's nothing else. There's only self-development. Whatever we do, it's for ourselves. So.
but I think in the first place, it's for us because we will first have a look at our charts. And in any case, it's first.
It's true. In order to understand the theory, we probably go back to our own chart. But I don't want it to stay there. I want us to find the courage. That's why we have the practice sessions. Because even in that mirroring back, many times, like, thank you. Like the way you said it so simply, it's like people are going to cry and stuff in the breakouts because that's what happens. When somebody sees your soul and speaks to it in a way that nobody spoke to it before, that's the whole thing with reclaiming the moon. Our caregivers weren't evolved to the level where we are today. They couldn't speak to us, seeing us in that way. And then suddenly somebody's there on the other side doing it. I get goosebumps because it is powerful. It is powerful to give ourselves and the other that chance to be seen, to be heard, to be read, to be activated. Robin, basically we are going the golden path. It's simple in that sense. We're going activation sequence, which is the same as incarnation cross. And that includes the profiles. That's 70% of who we are. We're going to start there. Is the dynamics of the incarnation crossover activation sequence. Then we're going into the Venus sequence, and there are two parts of it. It's the Dharma and the Karma. Everything that has to do with attraction and purpose up until the IQ. Anchoring, Dharma, relationship, chemistry. Then the next thing is the Trinity of embodiment that is also connecting into the core, because that's the trimesters in the womb. So that's the next thing. And then we're going up into what we would say pearl sequence. We're looking at our Sun, our Jupiter, our Mars. We're going out even further out to include Mercury, to include midheaven, more things from astrology as well. So it's a journey. You could say there's a journey with all the planets, and it's a little bit of zigzagging, but it's mainly, you would say, it's the Sun and the Earth, and then we go out all the way to Pluto. And then as we're doing that, we're looking at the planet, but we're also saying, we do always in molecular design, is this in an open center? What house is this in? We can start to do that from the beginning, but we might, depending on who comes in, you could say, I really want to focus on just the golden path and the planet and the line, and that's what I'm going to focus on. Or somebody would say, I really want to use the astrology language together with the golden path. So that's what makes it, you're not going to be bored, because each person is going to have their unique preference of how to bridge things. But yes, the map is the golden path. And then if it blooms or flourishes out in that kind of star pearl sequence into everything, because that's what the star pearl is. Richard, yeah, he added 3 planets, but it's like everything comes in once you are not stuck in the shadow patterns that you're repeating from your ancestry and your childhood. And once you're connected with your awareness and your embodiment in the activation sequence, everything is possible. And that's why all the planets come in at the end. But to simplify, yes, we're going from the close to what's far out. And then in each and every layer, we can bring in however much we want of the definition in the body graph and the overlay of the astrology. So really maybe speak about somebody's pearl sequence, saying 3 of the archetypes in the traditional pearl sequence are in the sign of Virgo. Like you have the 40 and the 59 twice, for example. That's huge, because you have to go in layers. So you look at the pearl before you look at the star pearl, before you look at all the other planets. So these kinds of things, it would be a good thing to bring in the astrology there. It would be good to bring in that you have every single gate in the emotional center, for example, if that's what the, so, but these are things, of course, we're going to speak about. And like I said to Brady before as well, it's like, we come back and you're like, I focused on this. Was this the right thing to focus on? It's like, there's never a right or wrong, but maybe something else was a little bit more relevant. Let's name that. You know how I'm straightforward with things. I'm always going to say things. So you can trust that I'm going to be honest. And even if I don't feel like you're prepared, even if I feel like you're lost, you used the whole entire thing for your self-development, I'm going to tell you. And then you're going to be like, maybe I just need a certification that I love myself and I care about my own blueprint. I think it's going to lead everyone to where you're supposed to go. So to not be so rigid either, like what it's supposed to be. What I do know is that this is a good start, and it's going to lead to something that's more formal. But maybe you're not that person. If you're a 3-5 and you'd like to take risks, maybe this would be more the kind of dynamic thing you do. If you're a 1, you probably want the details. You want to know the curriculum before. You want to know how much time you need to spend. The details in the first line. I don't have a first line, I can tell you, but I can try. We can help each other. I'm a 3rd line in my culture. I always feel like the dynamic with a little group is helpful. So thank you for showing up. You know where to find me. If you haven't already jumped on, just text me on Facebook or email me at bella@unlockyourdesign.com. Thank you for tonight. Bye.